Hi everyone! Today I would like to show you how to easily document your software architecture. Most of us have experience with documenting software architecture by text or by diagrams, then maintaining this text and putting it somewhere to the shared drive, then forgetting where it was created or duplicating the stuff in different documents because, for example, there was one team in the beginning and this team was describing something in one way, and then there were new guys who were coming, and then the entire core team was replaced, and then the new team setup started to document the stuff in a different way and in a different place. And then after several years, it's kind of a problem to find my software architecture, to have it up to date, because quite often the documents which we write are then obsolete when we are finishing it. So this is another thing which we have and another problem that we need to deal with while documenting software architecture. And I would like to show you today something that is called architecture decision log that can be kept next to your code and then can be updated, can be maintained, can be extended, and so on. And it is easier to not to make it obsolete within next months, years, and so on. So before I take you to adventure of creating architecture decision log in GitHub repository, I would like to introduce you to the concept of it, to the overview of it. What is this? So architecture decision log in general describes the decisions that you took as a team in the past and which had consequences for your system. From the perspective of the content of it, you can see that we have different records, and these records, like you see here on the screen, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, they are related to our decisions. So you can imagine that this is our team, and in this team we created 4 architectural decisions, and each of these decisions is in a form of a record. It's called record. And as you see here, it is the extension of the ADOC, but you might take any extension that you wish. It can be Markdown, it can be text file, it can be whatever extension your team prefers. And here, each of this record contains a description. The description is shown here. As you see, we have the overview of the first decision that we made together as a team. We want to record architecture decisions. So if you go back on the list, you have here record architecture decisions. Here is a short title, and this title here is related to that one. You see record architecture decisions, record architecture decisions. What is inside such a record? We have a date. Date shows when the decision took place. And you see here it was done on 1st of December 2019. So quite a long time ago, 3 years. Then we have a description of a problem. So what was our problem from the perspective of the development team? And the problem was that we were asked to document somehow the architecture decisions in our project and store them somewhere. We didn't want to go with the text descriptions that in text files or so that are put somewhere in the network drive or so. We didn't want that, and that's why we created an architecture decision log. So what was our decision for this problem? And here you can see that our decision was that whenever there is any architectural decision, we store it in our log as a record. And we use ADOC extension for that, and we create always a separate file. So like you see here, we have 000x, and x is of course number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 255, and so on. And then a short title of a decision. So like you see at the top, record architecture decisions. Then whenever we want to add a resource, we create a new folder inside our architecture decision log, which is called resources. So the name is generic because it will be reused by all the records in the future. And inside we put a resource like an image, so 0001, record architecture decision, downspace, first image, or so PNG. Inside we put any resource that we want. So as mentioned, it can be PNG, JPEG, maybe some movie or whatever. It's up to you as a team or as a guy who will document this decision. And then here is the example title of the resource. Of course, each problem and decision has some consequences, especially when we are talking about architecture. Usually we have some kind of trade-offs. So there are of course advantages, but there are disadvantages to what we selected. Here in this example, we just have as a consequence the definition that every time we have a new architectural decision, there is a need to record architecture decision log. So someone has to go into the GitHub repository or GitLab repository or Azure DevOps repository and so on, and then add a new record. So this is first consequence, because we need to remember that. And then we do not modify all the decisions. So whenever we want a new decision, then it's added as a new record. And this is very important, because if we look into the list of our records, you see we are having it from 1 till 4. So they occur on a timely basis. The oldest decision is 01, the newest decision is 04, but each decision is immutable. You cannot change it. You can't go into 002 and say, now I don't want to use this clean architecture and so on. No, if you don't want it, just go into new decision record. And I will give you an example. So imagine that your team started working on some solution and then you decided to use domain model for it because you felt that yes, it will be a perfect fit for this. So you recorded it with 002, use domain model. But after several weeks or months, you spotted that it makes no sense to go with domain model because we are complicating it, overcomplicating the problem that we have. And for that one, the perfect solution will be active record. So you say 003, you add a new record, use active record. Then when someone else comes in after several years, maybe after 4 or 5 years, there is a completely new team, then they see why you did it, because now they might start thinking, hey, this solution is a perfect fit for domain model. Why didn't these guys select domain model there? And then they go to architecture decision log and they see immediately that you did it. But then you decided for active record with these consequences, with your decision and with the problem described. And they see, okay, so that's not a problem because nowadays it makes sense to go with domain model. So they add a new decision, 1234, use domain model. And then anyone else who will come to your repository will be able to read it from top to the bottom. And very important thing, because we talked about this architecture decision log and about our records, about the structure of it, but how to store it, where to store it. So imagine that you have a monorepo. In monorepo, you have the root of it and you can create at the root. So there where the readme is, for example, then you can create the new folder, which will be called architecture decision log. And inside this folder, you put the decisions that are relevant for your solution. That was easy. What to do when you have distributed systems? So maybe you have multiple different repositories and these repositories are the repos for microservices or so. Then each of these microservices is probably responsible for some set of rules and belongs to some kind of domain. So therefore, they are responsible for different things and they will have different architectural decisions. So then in every single repository, you put a new folder, which is called architecture decisions log. And then inside you put the records which are relevant for it. So you start numbering it from 1 till X. And in each and every repo, you start numbering it from 1 and then you go down. because one microservice might follow transaction script, one might follow active record, one might follow domain model, and so on. If you have some decisions that are core and generic for all the repos which you have, distributed repos which you have, then you can create a core repo, and in this core repo you will have links to every single repository for the distributed system. And additionally, the architecture decision log with its own numbering from 1 till X about the core decisions, architectural decisions which you did as a team. So this can be handled that way. So now, after describing what and how to do this architecture decision log, I would like to quickly show you how you can do that in your repository based on the repo that I created for this episode related to architecture decision log on my GitHub. So as you can see, we have here the repository which is called architecture decision log. So in your case, it will be the name of your repository. And inside here we are at root level. So you see here the README. You can of course read here some short description about this YouTube episode. What we want to have here is some kind of a structure. So we want a folder which is called architecture decision log, and inside we want to have our first record. So what we need to do is we create new file. So as mentioned before, we want to have it in architecture decision log folder, and inside this folder we want to add a first record. So a record architecture decisions. So here we have it, and we can now add this new file. We can of course save it as the format that you want to have. Let's say we go with Markdown. And now what we want to have is to record somehow this decision. So we need a title. So record architecture decisions here. Then we have a date. So date can be 1st of January 2023. And then we can have our problem description. So here you are describing the problem. Then we have the section about our decision. So here we are describing what we want to do as our team and what was our decision here. And of course, in the end, we want to say consequences, advantages, and what are these advantages. We just want to say, we can say like create initial architecture decision record, and you can put optional description here, and then we are committing this file here to our repo. So from the perspective of the repository, you see we have architecture decision log, and it is exactly the same as you would have inside your repository. And here we have our first Markdown document. We go inside and we see how it looks like after our commitment. Of course, when you are adding files from the perspective of GitHub, you can preview how does it look like, but it doesn't matter for this video. It's just the example of how you can record it. And of course, if you need another one, then you can just add another file here and go ahead and extend it with new records and new. So if you liked today's episode, just leave the comment. If you did not like it, just leave a comment as well. Maybe you know better options other than architecture decision log, then as well, please write about it. And I'm curious if you use it on a daily basis, the architecture decision log. Let me know about it. Thank you for watching the episode. Have a good day and see you in the next episode.